Welcome back to Scrub League, everybody. I am joined as always by the Bronze Goddess, Samantha Eamon,
Hey guys.
and Aiden McCarville.
Are we working on a nickname for me?
No, I was trying to come up with something about how you're only here because we're bad and you to laugh at us, and that's your whole motivation. But it's a bit long.
Well, since your tag is peasant, why not poor man's Probius?
Because poor man's Probius is Probius.
I was gonna say every Probius is a poor man's Probius.
Is it's poor Probius at this point.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot to talk about today. As always, Sam's going to fill us in about the team formerly known as Roll20 and some of the changes to HGC and problems with team ownership. I'm going to talk a little bit about people's perceptions after the latest laning changes, specifically in reference to how snowbally things have apparently gotten, games getting a lot shorter, and what Blizzard's going to do about it. And Aiden and Sam are going to talk about the new hero Blaze, who's hit the PTR, and the changes to Sam's most played hero, which is Malth at like level 45 or something absurd. Yep, so all that and more. Sam, why don't you get us started? What exactly happened with Roll20, or what did they call it now? It's not Roll20 anymore.
Yep, the team formerly known as Roll20 is now Team 12, and I'll be referring to them as such from now on because it's going to get a little bit confusing talking between Roll20, the organization, and former Roll20, the team. So when I say Team 12, I am referring to the former Roll20 team. Okay, so basically what happened is the team announced, Team 12 announced that they were parting ways with their sponsor Roll20, and it had a lot to do with contract negotiations. Basically, the team wanted a little bit more job security and a little bit more control, and to keep control rather, of their HGC slot. Because right now, one member of that team owns the HGC slot, and this is very important to remember because it is a bone of contention for a few different teams, and we'll get into that a bit later. But basically what I want to do is read a little statement from Roll20, the organization, from Nolan Jones, to explain a little bit more about what happened between the organization and the team. So, in the words of Nolan Jones, since October, we've talked at length with our roster about a way to gradually gain ownership of their HEC slot. But conversations never got even so far as a true method or numbers. There were a great many factors involved. Players wanted locked future job security, but of their own choices, this roster only contains 2 of the initial 5 people we signed with in May. The fact that HEC is a relegation style league, so there are no full franchising guarantees, and simply the many organizations in esports that currently operate on bad faith principles and as such make any and all negotiations understandably difficult. So basically, what that means is Roll20 wanted control of that slot because they wanted basically control over the team's roster and other things that come with that ownership. And the team said, well, we don't want to give that to you without job security, so that once you get control of our roster, you can't kick all of us or shake everything up or do whatever. So both sides could not agree very quickly and have decided to part ways. And there's multiple factors in this that I think shows an issue with the league itself, and the way it's set up, but also with the game itself and the kind of sponsors and organizations that it attracts. But what's your guys' first impression on this?
It's tough to fault people for wanting to, have the ability to not just immediately get fired from the thing that they want to do. So like, I can't really. It's hard for me to blame the people who are now Team 12 for not or for wanting that security. It's probably exactly what I would be looking for in that scenario because as we've seen these things change, God, it feels like weekly we can see changes. So it would really suck to just suddenly be gone.
Yeah, honestly, like so many things are out of the control of both the sponsor and the team that each side looking for some control over what they can get. Uh, that doesn't surprise me. It makes perfect sense because there's so many things that can change with the game itself. Blizzard just changing the rules, the HEC structure, the team can get relegated and drop out of the league completely. Uh, different things changing the players' lives. Like there's so many things in flux that like everybody wants like as much certainty as possible. So the fact that they couldn't share that, they could either the sponsor or the team's gonna own the slot, right? So the fact that they had to fight over it is just kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think there's multiple factors to this. This is not just a black and white issue, and it's not an issue that's going to go away anytime soon. And I have to give credit here to Trent Murray, who's an esports consultant at Trent_esports on Twitter. And he did an in-depth video kind of going through how this looks for the sponsor, how this looks for the league, how this looks for the players, and what players and organizations need to do going forward to kind of make this a little bit better for everybody involved. And I think one of the major issues for players, at least, is because the whole realm of esports is so new. This isn't something that's been around for a really long time. And I think that when players get approached by a sponsor, they're like, yes, okay, we want to, do the sport for a living. We want to help it grow. We want to play the game we love. Let's sign a contract. We, in all honesty, have no business signing. Get that money so we can play and practice enough to be good, and without really any thought to the future. So they're signing something that's good in the short term and may not necessarily be good for them in the long term, because they may not be thinking about stuff like health insurance or benefits or salaries, um, and any of those kind of costs that come associated with owning a team. Um, and I think, this is an issue that's been kind of beaten to death, but it's not going to go away until everybody involved kind of gets their act together. So, my second problem is with the organizations that Heroes itself is attracting, because it's not what we would call like one of the main esports, one of those really kind of mainstream ones that people think of when they think of esports, which is things like League of Legends and Riot or CSGO. The organizations that are attracted to our little quirky game aren't necessarily the ones that have the capital to back up their investment.
So it's so
Or
weird to me that we're talking about a currently supported Blizzard game is like the small quirky one, but I know just what you mean. It's just like a strange world that we're living in.
right, the player base is smaller, the money invested is smaller. I mean, if you look at the Overwatch League, it's very obvious which esports realm Blizzard is really investing in.
Oh boy.
But and that's the problem is and I'll get to Blizzard's issues with this in a second, but the organizations, and it's true what Roll20 said, is there are organizations right now and sponsors right now acting in bad faith. How many times have we seen a team name change? How many times have we seen, rosters get shaken up? My third thing is Blizzard itself. I think they're kind of hurting themselves here as far as their esports presence with this game. The relegation stuff, I think there needs to be a different system for this, because once a sponsor invests in a team, they're doing it for the promotion of their company first and foremost.
Yeah, like what is the point on like Blizzard's part for implementing a relegation system?
I think, and I have to give credit again for Murray for this, because he said, why not follow a kind of model that the NFL would follow, in that if you want a team in a league, you take a proposal to that league and say, this is why my team is the best. Here's what we have set up. We have this sponsor. We have this going forward. Our players are being trained. Our players are being paid. Um, and what Blizzard would do, you'd pick, say, your 16 teams with the best proposals, and those are the teams playing in this league going forward.
I just wonder that,
Rather,
like, because some of these teams are transient, right? Like the sponsors could just drop them, or like the teams could disintegrate for one reason or another. They don't want to like lock it in too hard and be like, these are the HGC teams. Buy your jersey, buy your pennants. Buy your sprays in game, because they could just wink out of existence. So I wonder whether the like relegation system is set up to kind of match the fact that these teams could be gone in an instant, and they do disappear with some regularity.
right. Well, the teams are locked. The rosters are locked for all of phase 1. But the problem is, my thing is, you should lock the sponsor too. If they're going to go ahead and sign a contract with a team, make sure they're locked down. If they want to get out of Heroes, let them get out at the end of the season. But then again, that's bad from an investor's point of view, because if they're experimenting with esports and they go into Heroes as like a tester, they're not going to want to invest for an entire year, because that's a lot of money. There's a
Yeah, it
lot of
does.
travel.
They are kind of like juggling different priorities, right? Because like they want sponsors to get in, so I'm sure they're making all sorts of different compromises to say, okay, no, you can back out at this stage, or you don't have to do this, or we can do that. But at the same time, that leads to the type of like instability that makes it so hard for the players to make a living or to try and like have stable income.
Another point that was made is these players have to go ahead and really try hard to make themselves known in whatever game that they play. They have to put in the time to get really good. They have to make their presence known. Like, I'll give credit to Michael Udall. At least for me, he's done a great job of having that standout personality that people remember. So they don't just remember his team, they remember him. So I think they have to kind of work on their presence. They have to work on their social media presences even. Make sure you have, max number of Twitter followers. Make sure you're streaming constantly. Make sure that you can make those really flashy plays that make people remember you and want to buy your merch. I've always said this, there's always a problem with visibility of players in this sport. So in order to attract a sponsor, you have to be that standout personality, and that comes from streaming. So some of this fault's got to go to the players too. They're rushing into contracts they have no business signing.
I can't exactly fault anyone for like getting a contract that on the surface is basically, hey, do you want your dreams to come true? And then just signing it. Because I know for a fact if like Monster Energy was like, hey, Aiden, you bothered us enough that we're going to sponsor you, I would just say, yes, absolutely. Even if on page 3 it said I had to give them my firstborn or something,
Hey
it
Aiden,
would be signed.
you've pretended to be sponsored by Monster Energy long enough that we're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
One stipulation:
that's kind of my plan.
every 3 hours you have to give us half a liter of blood.
Signed.
Done. So
Already signed.
so Sam, obviously like this conversation's been very wide ranging. There's like contracts and player exposure, and there's so many different factors that we can examine. But just like bottom line it for us, like what do you think that like the people listening to the cast and the people who are watching the HGC should take away from this latest shakeup with the team formerly known as Roll20?
Yeah, I war with my love of this game and the reality of having an esports league right now. And the reality is they need better sponsors who have what it takes to back up the contracts that they're giving out. And that means the money, that means the time, that means the merchandise, that means everything. And unfortunately, until players and the league find those better sponsors, it's going to be really, really difficult to not have this like mid-season change up and all these team change ups that you're seeing now. Because as Kevin kind of alluded to earlier, Team Expert again is parting ways with their organization as well. So we're going to see a new team name with them. I do wish Team 12 luck because they're gonna need it, and I hope they learn something from this and take the time to find the sponsor that's gonna stick with them.
Yeah, this is what you might call a transitionary period for the team. Speaking of transitioning periods, Here's the Storm is just always in a constant state of flux. And one of the biggest shakeups was this 2018 laning changes, which, I mean, there's been some changes. People freaked out. It's like there was the stealth changes, there was the big support nerf, obviously the changes to mercs and to laning and to minions and to globes and so on. The sky didn't fall. We're on the other side of it. We've been playing with it for a while. But something that people have been complaining about is that they feel like the games are getting increasingly snowbally. Because they were trying to make the early and mid game more impactful. Because basically, how they felt that like games were going is that you dirtled around, you had a big dumb team fight mid, somebody died, didn't really matter. People wandered to their lanes at some point. Once you hit like level 16, 18, 20, that's where the game was decided, basically. Like, you could be really far behind, you win a big team fight, the enemy team is dead for 60 seconds. You just walk ahead, take out a keep, take out the core. So the beginning and mid game didn't really matter. Now people are feeling like it's swung a little bit too far the other way. They're feeling like once you get an advantage in the early game, once you get that first objective, you can just carry that all the way to the end. So first of all, I wanted to ask you guys whether you feel like this has been your experience since that patch dropped.
Slightly, yes, I have noticed some shorter games. To the extent where I would call it and say, this is a big problem. I haven't noticed it as much, but maybe in the higher ranks that would be the case.
I've literally only seen games go as long as they used to. Sometimes when we're playing on like Volskaya, for example, which is just, I don't think a map that will ever be short unless something goes horribly wrong. But like other than that, yeah, we've won several games at like level 14 or 15 at this point. Like it's either you just snowball out of control and you're level 18 and the enemy team is level 14, or just you win super early because I don't know, everything is different now apparently. Just mercs are doing all the work.
I actually appreciated this game for being the length that it was before the changes came in, because it was still shorter than League of Legends or Dota.
It's still kind of a draw to not have to commit to like a 45-minute game every time you want to just launch.
Oh, it's huge. Like if it's the afternoon and I'm like, if I play a game, I'll probably be late for work. But like 10 minutes late for work, it's not that bad. Let's play some HOTS.
Can confirm he has done that. But still, like the longest match I've ever had would be like 35 minutes on the dreaded Dragonshire, because every time I get that map, I'm like, okay, I'm here for a solid half an hour every single time. So
Yeah, basically just like light a few candles, get some snacks, settle in, get a blanket.
yeah, exactly. And so for the longest game that I would have being 35 minutes, I was fine with that. That's at the long end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So it is kind of map dependent. Like you guys talked about Volskaya and about Dragonshire. Some people were complaining, especially about Braxis holdout, and Braxis gets a lot of complaints. I know Sam, you don't like Braxis very much, for instance.
Hate it.
I love Braxis. There was a post on Reddit a few days ago that was talking about how, according to statistics this guy pulled, which I take with a grain of salt just because I'm not really sure about the sources and sample size and so on. He was
'Cause
suggesting,
Reddit?
well, because Reddit, and also because I don't know Solau89 personally. I don't know his credentials.
I don't remember actually reading actual statistics in this. I just remember seeing a number that was kind of thrown around.
It's because you actually have to like read further down in the comments where people were like, actually, asking for sources, and then he like brought out the spreadsheet. So he was suggesting that if you win the first Zerg wave in Braxis, the first objective, then you would win 84% of the time. And now that number is always going to be high because, games that are a landslide, yeah, you're going to win the first objective and win the whole game, right? Because you were just horribly outmatched from the beginning, mismatched. But there's suggesting that this is like especially egregious. A statistic that I put a little bit more faith into is one that was pulled a few days ago, talking about how the average game length has been reduced by 1 minute and 44 seconds since the gameplay update, which is like an 8.5% reduction in game time. So they were using the uploads to HOTS API, and they were saying that the average game time before was about 20 minutes and 26 seconds, and now it's like 18 minutes and 42 seconds. So it's been reduced by almost 2 minutes. The reason I trust this is because Blizzard weighed in that thread and didn't contradict them. And what they had to say was basically that game times are running a bit faster than we'd like now, particularly in high MMR bands. So that's, the actual like Masters League, places where people know to push core when you can push core and like push with boss and with mercs, the things that seem to be a little bit overpowered right now. And they said that there are going to be tuning changes to come help out with that. So when people were starting to question, like, is that connected to the whole snowball effect? Blizz Travis, the lead game designer, was saying, yeah, they're tied together. They said that the shorter game times are largely driven by the strength of pushing, particularly with mercenaries. That was intentional, that they wanted to increase the strength of pushing with mercs, but they say it's probably too strong. So that seems like what they might be tuning is weakening the buffs to mercenaries that they had given. But there's a lot of different ways that they could handle it in terms of, weakening mercenaries, increasing the strength of towers, which particularly towers are not nearly as threatening as they used to be. What do you guys feel like about that? Like,
oh my god, yeah, people are just diving under towers now. They don't care. It's not great. It feels like, I don't know. It just feels like even despite not having ammo anymore, even just like the towers, the front towers along the wall, just don't really matter anymore.
Well, they made one change that I'm so grateful for, which is that it takes a second for the front wall to shoot you. Like, if you just dip your toe into range, you don't take a cannonball to the face. You get the sound effect that's like, hey, you're in the death zone, and you actually have a second to like pull back. Because that was always really frustrating fighting in lane.
But I don't know. It just feels like towers, the front towers just don't seem to matter anymore. It's very, very easy to just take a tower like right off the bat because they don't matter. People are diving under towers all the time. You don't have the additional tower next to the forts anymore to help clear waves that get onto the fort. So the fort is reduced to shooting a single shot at a minion wave at a time. So it just, I don't know. It feels like maybe things have swung too far towards pushing being really, really strong.
Yeah, it's interesting because like there's also the effect that happened with the support apocalypse where they nerfed their damage across the board. Is now you have one fewer member of your team that can wave clear appropriately, so that when you're getting pushed in, you don't have as strong a response to it. I mean, I guess equally on the other side of it, if you're pushing with your support, then they're not clearing waves as fast. But to me, like the number of times I've been stuck as a support, like clearing bot lane because nobody else wants to switch with me, it's too damn high. So Aiden, like we've heard from Sam saying that the decreased game time is kind of a problem for her. Like, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, like I'm in the same camp where I liked the time before. I think it's starting, like I've noticed, like really noticed now, many games where things end by like level 16, and it really sucks for certain heroes that I love to play, like
Nazeebo.
Nazeebo just sucks now. Like
that's what. Yeah, especially because it's almost appropriate because they nerfed his long game and then they increased his spiders, which is hysterical to me because you keep talking about how they're gonna have to nerf spiders sooner or
Spiders are
later.
so strong, and every single update is like, well, I guess we'll buff spiders. I'm just, it's bananas. I don't get it, but all right, cool. At least he still has really strong spiders to make up for him having literally nothing else to do.
Yeah, because normally the system used to be like you get to 20 and then you take over the game. Now getting to 20 is like difficult. Some people it seem like they actually like it, where they're saying like if you draft a late game comp, then you have to work to get to the late game as opposed to just waiting for it to get there, which is like a different kind of tactical strategic decision.
But I think it's too hard to actually get there. Like if you draft a late game comp versus people who are just going to rock the early game, I feel like with how like out of hand things get really, really fast, you're just not going to make it. You're going to be Nazeebo sitting there at level 15 being the saddest witch doctor.
Yeah, like especially me and I love to play Zul'jin, and he's just got those uncapped quests. Longer games definitely suited him, and he's got some really busted level 20 talents as well. So I definitely missed that in addition. So what do you guys feel like is the answer? Do you think just like nerfing mercs is enough? Because mercs are the real deal now. The number like I play games and there's always mercs just like knocking at the front keep walls constantly. You're
Bruiser
trying to
Camp needs to be nerfed.
you're trying to go
I'm
do the
throwing that out
objective.
there.
You're trying to do the objective and you're like, well, I can't because mercs. Or I could go, clear some waves or go hunt some people, go rotate, but I should probably just take these mercs and push with them.
Bruiser Camp too strong.
Bruiser Camp is very strong.
Specifically the Knight Camp or whatever it is on most maps.
Yeah, the 30%.
It's too strong.
The 30% spell armor is pretty ridiculous.
I mean, alternatively to doing anything with the merc problem, it would be kind of interesting to see scaling on towers. So bringing down towers early is actually a significant thing because later on, let's say they're more like League of Legends where towers are actually significant still into the late game. And actually one change or one suggestion that I saw that I would absolutely love is now that the fort doesn't have the extra tower, if you would make the fort splash on minions in a small radius. So not for full damage, but do some splash damage to minions so that it doesn't just get bowled over by a single minion wave. It'd be great.
Yeah, I think possibly what might improve it is increasing the rate of fire on towers, because I think that's what people were saying is like the bigger shift losing the small tower is not so much the damage because they rolled that in, but it's the rate of fire. Is like if there's a 2 health minion that rolls in there, it absorbs the full shot, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that that shot was stronger doesn't actually help it clear the wave that much faster.
I think, absolutely love to see towers get stronger with your team to make it a significant advantage to actually bowl over towers. Then you don't have to. I don't think you have to do anything to mercs because they can scale along with the towers. But if you are able to like early game, pull an Asmodan or whatever and pull down a tower, you have secured like an advantage in that lane because late game that tower would be doing actual noticeable damage. So you can't just because you wouldn't be able to just dive under this tower.
Yeah, so what we're all just saying is that like we want this is an oversimplification, but like we all just want things to be meaningful. We want minions to be meaningful, we want towers to be meaningful, and some things just aren't in the right balance.
I think some things are a little bit more meaningful than they need to be currently.
Yeah, I mean personally, like I love playing heroes that push. So like in the last HGC finals, right? Like the whole end of the season, like there were 0 specialists basically that were played by any of the teams. So I'm wondering whether the move to nerf the wave clear on supports and then strengthen all these things was meant to sort of put wave clear back as like a desirable element into pro play. So I don't know whether that was an intention, was to show off a little bit more of the roster in pro play, because they do get played quite a lot, just like in normal casual HOTS, right?
Yeah,
So I was looking forward to that as being a change, and being like, okay, maybe it's like the correct decision to be like, we don't have enough wave clear, let's draft Azul or something, as an example.
I hadn't thought of it like that, but actually, I completely agree with you. I think that that is the reason. Because if you're not going to put, a lot of specialists in high casual play, but also pro play, it makes. We've always talked about composition diversity, and that would definitely help.
Yeah, and I hope that in addressing this current imbalance, they don't swing it so far the other way that like specialists don't become useful again. The wave clear isn't useful again, because I really like that aspect of the change, and I feel like from what I'm hearing from the community, like people are generally on board with everything that's happened. It just the numbers aren't quite right. So
we
people are
like the
talking
changes
about,
in theory, just in practice, they're not quite perfect.
anyway, talking about wave clear, a new hero that I'm very enthused about is the somewhat ridiculously named Blaze. So, Aiden, why don't you tell us about this new monster on the scene?
Well, Captain Edgelord is
Captain
a fire
Edgelord.
bat. His name is Blaze.
Okay,
Come
look,
on.
I'm gonna pretend like we don't choose our nicknames. All right, they get thrust upon us.
No one in their right mind was like, "Whoa, this guy's a fire bat. I'll name him. I'll just nickname him Blaze."
You realize how
No.
many drugs the Marines are on in the StarCraft universe, right?
I don't care. Tychus manages to be clever.
It's true, but he's the exception.
And you know that guy's on more drugs than most.
It's true. Yeah, no, I try and completely ignore that whole Blaze thing. I'm just gonna like
Yeah.
I actually get like annoyed when people call Morales medic, and I'm like, oh, she has a name, but you can call him Firebat. It's fine.
See, I would have even preferred Firebat or like even Miles to Blaze. Blaze is kind of lame. It's kind of like that username you would use on MSN Messenger when you're like 13.
It sounds like it should be surrounded by lowercase and uppercase X's.
Exactly, and those things that made your name change color.
Also, like, as much as I want to call him Firebat, part of my problem with him is he just doesn't feel like a Firebat. Like, you shoot fire at people, sure, but like he chucks oil around and he charges at people, and it's weird. Like he's really fun. I played him a little bit on the PTR. He seems really fun to play. I won't down on him for that. But Blaze is just a weird design in that it seems like they're like, okay, we need to make a Firebat character. So he shoots fire for his Q, and whatever. We have these other ideas. Let's just like staple them onto our Hellbat character. I don't know why I keep saying Hellbat. Firebat character, and we'll just ship them because that's all we got.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? It's just sometimes the requirements of the game mean that the fantasy is like with Probius, for instance, they were like, okay, we can't just have him be another Gazlowe, so we have to distinguish him in some way. We can't just have him make a whole bunch of turrets because that's going to make a ton of unpathable terrain and it's going to be really messy. So sometimes like the restraints of the game and the needs of the game in terms of, okay, we need another tank. We need someone who's good at area denial. All of that gets in the way of the fantasy sometimes, which is a problem for me. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and he has one alt that I'm really looking forward to trying out because I think the mechanics of it are going to be kind of messy, but it looks really cool. The one where he kind of makes himself into like a little hut or something, and all
Oh my
the
god, a hut.
characters can't whatever the
Oh my
building.
god.
It's like a little building. I don't know. Anyway, so and all the characters can go in it and then throw flames at people, and I think that's amazing.
It's adorable.
Sorry to all of the StarCraft 2 players.
I've never played
StarCraft 2
StarCraft.
players.
Come at me, guys. I've never played StarCraft in my life.
I
So
mean, first off, I think you're gonna have trouble getting literally anyone to click on your bunker, because, as I've mentioned to Kevin previously, when I'm playing Alexstrasza, I can barely get people to stand in my goddamn healing circle. So you're definitely not gonna be able to get your team to right-click on a building that just appears out of nowhere.
Even to save their
Yes.
own lives.
again, I'm saying it looks really, really cool, and I think it'd be really fun when it works. But it's another one where you're gonna need to be on comms and be coordinated in order for it to actually be effective. Other
Even
than
then, I
that,
think
though,
only 3 of your teammates will probably click it.
yeah. But other
Honestly,
than that,
like,
though, I'm actually looking forward to him, and I think he's actually like a bruiser that I would enjoy playing. That I don't know. I just really like his kit. I think the rhythm of it is really cool. It's kind of a mix of like Diablo, because with your charge and then just like a little bit of
He's
damage
Chen.
over time. He's okay. He's yeah, fine. He's
Chen.
Chen.
he's,
But like
he's Chen who
He's
stole.
exactly Chen.
He's Chen who stole a little bit from Tyrael when he wasn't looking.
But then
And, like,
to
got
be
better.
fair, who plays Chen anymore? Nobody. I barely one time out of 20 I'll see Chen played.
If you play Chen, leave a comment below. We'll give you a free
Yeah.
hero.
Yeah, we'll give you a free hero that's not Chen because
As an
nobody plays him
apology.
anymore.
Bill,
Yeah.
we're so sorry
think-
you have to play Chen. Here's a different, better hero.
I
I
think
feel
they
like
just
if people don't play Chen, the answer is not to release a new hero with the same kit, but to make Chen worth playing.
I think they just wanted to make a better Chen.
I mean, there are pretty meaningful differences in how the two operate, but it's a little bit weird that both of them have like gap closer, bucket of slowing goo, fire that ignites the bucket of slowing goo,
So I
D
feel
that
like
gives you
in
D that gives you
basically
armor.
in basically every meaningful way, I feel like Blaze's abilities are just better versions of Chen's abilities. Other than maybe like for the trolliness of just appearing on the other side of someone when they're trying to escape with Chen's kick.
Yeah, like Chen can just because he's Fat Illidan, right? This what people call him. Like he can chase for days. Firebat, he can chase, but he can't chase for days.
But he also
Just for
stuns
hours.
in an area when he hits someone, so like that's
Small
a very still that if he can stun multiple people with one ability and then burn them all, like it's pretty damn good. I
pretty
just don't see a reason to play Chen.
The thing I really like about Blaze is that he's got so many options, right? Like even with just his W, the oil slick, you can throw it out and not ignite it, which means it'll do that 40% slow, which is great. You can ignite it, which will deal damage over time, but gets rid of the slow, unless you take that talent. You can ignite it, and you can sit in it to heal yourself, which you can just do while you're in lane, just like light a fire and stand in it. Which, by the way, I think Blaze is a little overtuned in a few areas, but the healing that you get from standing in your own fire is, I think, a bit too high.
You can also get a talent to heal from his trait damage, which when combined just makes him unstoppable.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Oh man, and all the talent choices at one, where you can get like the shield, or you can get like double attack speed plus movement speed. Oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think the main thing that bugs me about his talents right now is like he has, like you mentioned, that like choice to make with his oil slick. Like, do you want to slow this person or do you want to burn him up? And then he has a talent that just says, screw meaningful choices. You can have both. And it just kind of feels like a cop out to his design.
Yeah,
Like,
but
you can just
there's
have
a-
both.
there's other music like desirable things on that talent tier where you can like just avoid that and pick up something else.
Yeah, but like,
Still a
or you
choice.
could live the dream.
Yeah.
You could have it all.
You can have it all. I feel like you do have it all with Blaze pretty much. Like, is there anything that you are missing with him? Like as a tank, like he's got initiation, he can peel, he can wave clear. When
This
he
is
has to, he can put
actually
out reasonable damage. He can sustain and heal himself.
I actually have a very, very minor but like kind of significant complaint in that his character model is extremely low res in comparison to other dudes. I don't know if you've looked at him in the character select, but is a very, very low res model. His textures are very, very bad.
Actually, I kind of noticed that when I was looking at the Fel Reaver skin that he's got. I was like, why does this look like garbage? I really didn't think about it until you mentioned it.
It looks like a like beta tier, like from when HOTS was in beta, old school skin that they had that they just brought out.
Oh, maybe they've had him
This
in the
is-
pipe since pre-beta.
Yeah,
They
maybe
finally
this is just
released it.
evidence that he was originally a concept way back when, and they just didn't do any work to update his textures.
Or maybe they just like upscaled a Firebat model from StarCraft 2. They just blew it up.
I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised at this point, man.
See, you know what? Something else that's like like low fidelity up with Blaze is his voice, but I love him for that. I love that like just kind of like over the radio patchy, you know, voice.
Well, it gives me the a feeling of like the barks, the unit barks from StarCraft.
Yeah, because it's got that like little bit of like rumbly like fire sound in the background that just kind of partially like obscures everything he's saying. I don't know. It gives him great personality, and I think they nailed the voice. I think the voice actor's tremendous. Everything he says is like a bad pun or idiom based on fire, which in a different like uh, context would be terrible, but in the jokey fun world of the Nexus it's just perfect.
I mean, he's not the only character that does that.
He's not. We've got like Pandemonium and all that, but just
So
for
what
the
about Asmodunk and all of his basketball puns?
okay, that's amazing.
Asmodunk has Space Jam puns, and those are the best.
Objectively. But yeah, it's just listening to his voice lines, like just reminds you how many turns of phrase we have in the English language based on fire. The number is high, and I think they included all of them.
It's worth pointing out that he doesn't have some of those classic lines that people really expected for a Firebat, like "need a light." How are you
He has
not
that.
gonna say "need a light"?
He totally has that.
Yeah, I've seen like 100 forum posts that say he doesn't have that.
It's one of his voice lines that you can get in loot boxes.
Thank
and
God.
so on.
Okay. Wait, does if you ping for help, does he say "my goose is getting cooked"?
I think he does say that.
Okay, if he doesn't, Blizzard Talentless hacks confirmed.
Yeah, I think they got pretty much all the important ones, if memory serves.
I mean, I don't expect them to get it right. They didn't. I'm still mad at them for not including Sake on Hanzo.
Still mad? Really? Come on.
Yeah, it's like one of only 2 voice lines that are worth having for him.
So back to like the actual gameplay of the video game. The bunker drop, I think, is going to be really weird to balance, and my first inclination is that it's a little bit weak because the damage that people do when they're in it is very light, and the bunker dies very fast. Not that it doesn't last very long, but it has very little health. It could be burned down really quickly. What I expected before I actually saw it in action was that you would drop it and then people would walk away and they just wait for it to time out and then they'd murder you, and it would be kind of bad in that sense. But it just looks like you drop it and then it just immediately explodes under the force of like a team assault. Like I think it might be more useful after some people have died and you're protecting a point at like with like maybe 2 or 3 people.
But like, why would they still be pushing the point if they lost that amount of people?
My question is, if you're in the bunker, for instance, like if you drop the bunker on like a Braxis capture point and people get in the bunker, do they still contest the point?
Yeah, like that is
I would
critical.
assume.
That is crucial because if it's like, if it's like when you get gorged by stitches or something and you're not on the point, then that would be pretty disastrous.
But this is where I can see a use for it, because actually using it, I know, and you would never want to use an ult to cap a camp, but if you're ever in a huge team fight over a camp, pop that. You're sitting in the circle for as long as you're probably going to need to. So if it does count for like on objectives and stuff like that, you could just pop that down and wait out the timer.
Yeah, that and chokes seem to be like the big obvious time to use it. Like they showed it like in the spotlight video, you using it to like dodge Ragnaros's lava wave or whatever, which sure.
I can't see myself ever doing that instead of just moving out of lane when I get a huge warning that lava is coming.
But we all know like there's a significant amount of player base that does not move out of the way that fire because for some reason they think they're gonna survive through it.
Yeah. But I still feel like I'm gonna pick that one the majority of the time, just because the other one's kind of boring to me. Like
Yeah.
he charges up and he does some AoE damage and slow.
It's boring.
Okay.
It's just like objectively more effective, immediately more effective.
Yeah, the fact that you can charge it up and then use it like either immediately for a short effect or like you can crank it all the way up, like that gives it a little bit of play that I enjoy. Like it's very flexible.
And the damage on it is actually quite good if you fully charge it.
Yeah, if you fully charge it,
There's-
it's like 5 seconds of slow, which is an eternity.
Yeah, 5 seconds of slow plus damage over that time, stacking with his other damage over time effects. Like he'll burn people down. It's pretty good. Just it's like the Gaul ult that isn't as flashy. Just the charge up and then do a burst of damage in an area type of deal. Like it's not cool. It's just effective.
Yeah. So where do we feel like he's gonna be in the meta? I feel like he kind of not replaces, but you know what I mean. Kind of takes over a lot of the same roles you might have with like a Johanna, where he's like this big tanky guy that's got good wave clear and is like good
Excellent wave
self-sustain.
clear, yeah. He almost like a Sonya without as much damage, really, because he can self-sustain forever in lane, clear the lane really, really easily.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. Like when I think of really great bruisers that I'd want on my team, my first and second pick are Sonya and Zarya. So maybe he is going to kind of be that new Sonya while still simultaneously being the new Chen. I don't know, but
honestly, I don't really know
that's
how.
I think.
I don't know how effective he's going to be like as a bruiser, like going damage build with him. Like he's continuously been described as a main tank, like in Blizzard's materials and elsewhere. I mean, you can build him damage, and I think he'll do more damage than like a Johanna or whatever will. But I don't know how strong his bruiser build is.
You could always just take him with Sonya and have two tanky characters that can push lanes very easily and sustain themselves.
Or Murden. Like there's certain similarities between him and Murden, other than Murden's crazy. Because Murden has crazy sustain too. I can see him kind of filling a Murden role actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I think we were speaking about that before off the cast, where he kind of feels like a Murden to me in that he's just extremely solid. Like he brings you everything you want in a tank, and he's just very safe. Like I don't know what you would do to counter Blaze exactly.
I don't know actually.
I think we'll have to play him a little bit and maybe record it for the viewers and kind of get a feel for him.
Yeah. Other things that we need to get a feel for is new Malf, because you've gotten pretty well worn. Like you've gotten real comfy with Malf these last few years, and now things are a-changing.
Blizzard, why do you do this to me?
Because they're making him more interesting.
More interesting, more like I'll actually have to turn my brain on when I play him now, because before it used to be okay, just cue the person who needs it, root some people, and go home, because your Moonfire was stupidly ineffective. and he does have a lot of changes coming for him. You know, there's his basic attack damage going down, which, okay, fine. Regrowth, this is one of the main ones. Regrowth is no longer going to have an initial heal effect. It's going to have a heal over time, which sounds really bad
It's going
when
to
you
be
first say it.
only heal over time. He used to.
Until you get to 20. Until you get to 20, then
Yeah.
you can have an initial heal again. But, so that's going to happen where you only have a heal over time now until 20. But you get certain bonuses for how many of your teammates have regrowth active, because now it's going to be lasting for more time. So it's made it so that you not only have to pay attention to who you're healing and how low their health is, but you have to pay attention to how many people have regrowth when you use certain abilities. Entangling Roots, your E is also getting some changes. Tranquility, the battle, let's be, really real, because Twilight Dream is the best ult. And again, it's going to have another thing where, it's going to have an effect on people with an active regrowth. So it's going to be, you have to be a lot more aware of where your team is and what your cooldowns are for them in terms of who has regrowth and who doesn't. And it's just going to take a lot more thinking and a lot more awareness than I'm used to having with him. He used to be my go-to healer when I just wanted to straight up do my job, not really think about it, and rock things, and also keep Asmodan from running out of mana. I don't know. I looked at this and I went, okay, I'll still love to play him. He's still my bae. I don't hate him, but this is actually taking Melf up a couple of skill steps, I think.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot more of Stukov now, because Stukov is like based around keeping your heal over time on multiple targets and, using your other abilities to like do burst heals. So if Malf is going to be more about having regrowth on multiple people and then getting burst heals with your Moonfire, that seems a lot like Stukov's gameplay to me. But I will say that I think it's more interesting and more dynamic than what Malf was doing before, which, while certainly like skill testing to land roots and to use your innervate on cooldown and like hit people with Moonfire and stuff, like there wasn't like a lot of room for creativity, or to like really maximize what you're doing. Like I've been playing some Junkrat recently, just because he's on free rotation. He's like one of the few heroes I don't own, and that's a character where you can do all kinds of different things. Like your creativity and your ingenuity like makes a really big difference. While Malf is just, as you said, it's always like turn your brain off and just push the buttons. Now I think this skill ceiling has been raised with him.
Exactly. And there's different things too, like Shando's Clarity, which I almost always take at level 1. The cooldown of the Innervate regenerates 25% faster for each active regrowth. So there's that regrowth thing again. It's almost like they took the easy initial heal away, but they gave you a lot of benefits to kind of make up for the kind of harder skill cap he's got now. Also, Scouting Drone has been removed. So that's another thing.
So is that just Raynor now who has it? Which is like it should be.
Yes, it may very well be, but yeah, it should absolutely just be on a Terran.
I don't see. Here's the thing. Moonfire's damage was already pretty. It was pretty bad. Its damage, its mana cost got reduced a little bit, but its damage also got reduced. But they're trying to make up for it because now every time you hit an enemy hero with Moonfire, you instantly heal all targets with an active regrowth for 140. So again, it's keeping everyone with an active regrowth pretty much all the time, because that's the only way you're really gonna be able to maximize it. Because if you just try and queue people when they're hurt, it's not going to work anymore. You've got to constantly keep your entire team with regrowth on them to really capitalize on all these new effects. So it definitely, gone are the days where you can I guess you wouldn't. I don't really solo lane with Malf, but he definitely has to be around more than one team member to really be effective now.
Yeah, and that's something that I like what they've been doing with their more recent philosophy is like as the roster gets bigger, they they keep making characters fit more into a niche, which I think is really great because it makes the draft matter more, and it um, makes like your choice of hero and what you are like specialized at. Like you have to go into games with a plan now, right? Instead of just being like, okay, we'll pick a tank, we'll pick a healer, and it doesn't really matter which one. They'll all basically do the same thing. Now when you pick a Malf versus picking an Uther, that's for like a very different game plan, right? Like with Malf, it's more like a sustained comp. You're keeping everybody up. While with Uther, it's like, okay, let's heal one guy, give him armor, go in, dive, hyper carry, and I really like that. So even though it kind of makes him a little bit more like Stukov, so to me maybe slightly less distinct, it's definitely more of a niche player than he was before.
Yeah, I'm a tad pouty about this because it just means I have to change the way that I've been playing him for so long and the way that I enjoyed him, and I don't like change. So Shrink Ray is also being removed, and so is Life Seed at level 13, which I guess with all these new talents, you don't really need Life Seed anymore. Um, but yeah, I'm really curious to play him because I have not played him yet with all these new changes and see how the playstyle changes, and hopefully I like it because I really truly love this character and he was everyone's go-to, and I'm wondering if that's going to change now.
Aiden, you have any thoughts on Mal before we sign off for the evening?
Well, I mean, my initial thought is his heal is now just bad Stukov healing, and that's probably never going to change for me. It just, like you said, it's different than he was and somewhat more interesting, but also just it was made more interesting because Stukov was already more interesting and did this but better. I think there were better ways of making him more thematic and interesting. And this
So
way,
when you say thematic, like, can you expand on that a little bit?
like, I mean, he's the druid, and anyone who has played World of Warcraft as a support druid knows your thing is managing heal over time on everyone, basically. So I would have liked.
Isn't that now what he's doing?
Yeah, so
Well,
maybe
he's
it's
only
been more
using
true to
one
his
spell
character.
though. So my thing would be, I would have liked to see him get regrowth and also rejuvenation. So he could have his regrowth that does a smaller heal over time, but has the little bit of the initial heal. And he could also have rejuvenation that just does a heal over time. So he has the option of healing two people at once, or if he needs like a big heal on someone who's up front, he can do regrowth and rejuvenation on the same target. So he can get not burst healing because he's a druid, and you don't want to give him like the high tier World of Warcraft druid talents because those are bananas. But he could have his version of burst healing, which is just like really sustained healing over time, which would be very druid. I mean, you could go even more druid thematic, but I don't want to get into like shape shifting because that's just a pit we'll fall into.
I don't think it's a mystery why his Twilight alt didn't get any changes, and they made a lot of changes to his actual
Tranquility.
healing. Yeah, Tranquility. Thank you. His healing alt, because they're trying to get people to use it more. It's one of those things where they realize that his alt choice is really one sided, and so now they're trying to make it more appealing. Because now you've got, and I disagree in the point that like you know he's only got the one spell, because they're trying to turn all of his abilities into kind of a healing ability, because if you hit enemies with Moonfire, you can have a regrowth heal and things like that. So I don't know. I'm kind of
Well, that's exactly my point though. Like, you've made him less thematically a druid and more thematically a Stukov, but without the burst.
yeah.
I don't know. I admit I like making Tranquility more useful, like they did with Lily and making her healing ult like worth taking
Again, those
over his
ults are
just
extremely similar.
yeah, exactly. So like I like the idea of making tranquility worthwhile, and I like in theory the idea of like building his kit around this ability. It's just not how it's a less for me it's a less interesting change than like the wide variety of World of Warcraft themed routes they could have taken their druid character. They could have made this really, really interesting, and instead they went for Stukov but green.
Well, I'm going to be trying him out, and hopefully we'll get to record it, and I'll be able to report back and tell you guys what happens to my favorite hero and whether or not I'm either going to be using him a lot more or not at all. I think it's going to be one of those two things for me. I don't think it's really going to stay the same. It's either going to be I'm going to love this and I'm going to play it all the time because it'll be broken, or I'm just going to hate it and stop playing him altogether. Well, guys, keep an eye out for that video where we test out a little bit of Blaze, aka Miles, aka Firebat, aka I hate all of these names. So, because we're gonna try testing out the new Melf, or at least I will be, and we're gonna try out Blaze and let you guys know what we think. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments, and also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ScrubLeagueCast. And scrubleaguepodcast@gmail.com if you want to send us a message about our videos or anything else. So until next time, guys, goodbye for me, Aiden, and Kevin.
And we'll
Like
see
Garbanzo.
you
Oh, shut up with that.
in the video game.
In the Nexus.
Conversation superfluous. Focus upon combat.